All right, this is our second day of videos for this class, and we are going to be tackling our second exercise today. But you might be wondering, where are these videos to be found? So if you scroll on the homepage of the Canvas course, once you're logged in, all the external pages are found under links. So our course section, this is the morning section, Tuesday and Thursday. We are 2348001, even if you're in the Art C section, right? It's all cross-listed into this Canvas shell. So you go down to links and you will find all of the external sites we use. For the most part. I don't think the emoji one is in there because we only use it for this exercise. But the ones we return to. So we're going to be learning a lot about Pixabay. We've talked about Photopea. We've talked a little bit about Imgur. But the YouTube is this second one right here. This is for all review of any of the in-class tutorials we do. It also gives you access to all past semesters' tutorial reviews. Now the way it's intended to be navigated is not like this. Instead, it is by clicking on playlists. And when you click on playlists, you'll see everything really nicely organized by assignment, right? So you are the morning section, so this was our very first playlist. We're fall 2025. This was our exercise 1 playlist on the line art jumble. So if we open that playlist, you'll see it. All right, this is in order here. It took us 5 15-minute videos to get through the whole process, including the bonusing finish extras. And of course, you can watch them at different speeds if you want to review something. Now, I do try to title them. I'm not super creative with my titles, but just to kind of summarize what was covered in those 15 minutes, right? So if it's the introduction of an important technique or an important tool, just look for that one. You can always subscribe to this channel. It is an NLC, a Northeast Lakeview College content channel, so it is copyright open. It is, you shouldn't see ads. It's not public domain, but it is able to be freely shared and used, and it should stay that way. So with that in mind, if you look back at all those playlists, if you ever want to look forward or see how an assignment that's coming up might have been approached, you can look back at spring 2025 semesters. I had 2 sections, one in which I used freeware, one of which I used all Adobe. And you can go back to fall 2024, you can go back to, you can go back a while. And the assignments change sometimes, but of course the most recent ones will be the most similar to what we're doing this semester. So what are we doing now? Well, we can actually look at spring 2025 and find exercise 2. What we are doing, all the way back here, is a custom vector shape emoji. So where can we find information about that? We go to our home page, and when we're introducing a new aspect of the course, we start with unit modules. Once we've introduced it, we can shortcut to where we turn it in the instructions under the assignments page. But the unit modules will give you the full introduction. So unit 3 is introducing you to vector shapes. Remember, we talked in the first class about 4 basic digital art disciplines. Compositing was the first. We got our introduction to that with exercise 1. Vector shapes is the second. Vector shapes are incredibly important to understand, and they are not pixel-based. So they are still 2-dimensional digital images, but because they're not pixel-based, they'll always be perfectly clean, but they have some limitations. They are perfect for things like type design, for things like logo design, and for things like emoji or icon design, as long as they're not used too small. If it's like sub 38 pixels, like really small icons, it actually wastes more memory to do them as a vector than to do them as pixels, because 38 is very few pixels. All right, so we can see some examples here. We get the introduction, the deliverables for this whole unit. The only thing we're turning in for this is exercise 2, but it is due by 11:59 tonight, so we're going to work on it. We can see past instructor and student examples. We have tutorial videos through the YouTube page to help, and we want to work on and complete exercise 2 today. Its general name is just shape composition. The last project was a composite with found line art, right? Now we are composing with shapes. So we are not using lines at all for this. We are using shapes. Even if the shapes kind of look like a line, we have to think of all edges of that line. And it really is a rectangle or a rounded rectangle or something like that. And we are going to be creating these shapes using the shape tools within Adobe Photoshop, which are vector tools. Later, we will be using Illustrator to create our own vector shapes and have fuller control. But this introduces it to us nicely. All right, some past examples. Unlike the line art exercise, here we're actually going to start by posting something that we create on another website. And so this is using a website called Emoji Maker. And then we are going to learn how to make that better, improve upon it on our theme using Adobe Photoshop shapes. So this was for the Lord of the Rings, trying to do an orc. This one was for Lord of the Flies. You do not need to do the banned book theme. I'm going to suggest you continue with the theme that you did for your first exercise. So my first exercise, I did a He-Man line art theme. So for this, I'm going to do a He-Man character and take the idea of that He-Man character, which is Skeletor, and turn that into a flat shape emoji. Right. So here we see how these vector shapes are used in professional work. And we can see how they're inspired. I always like to give kind of traditional art analogs, especially for my art majors. So pop art, which tried to imitate the productions of consumer products, right, like cereal boxes, things like that, is the fine art discipline from the 1960s. Here's an example by Andy Warhol, using those same means of production, so silk screening and flat colors, to mass produce portraits. So he did a very famous portrait series of Marilyn Monroe based on her obituary photo, filled it with flat color. This is a good instance of how vectors would be used in our commercial world today. So any kind of cereal box, title flag, character is all done with vectors and then silk screened onto the cardboard. And then I'm also showing you this. This will be our bonus finishing technique for this. This is what's called flat shape design. This is what's pretty standard with vectors. You can see these are all just single shapes filled in with a single pixel color, but they are all rendered as clean vectors, just like that. And then there's flat 2.0, and flat 2.0 adds a shadow tone to each of those flat shapes and just gives you a little bit more dimension. And sometimes that can be very useful. So we're not going to do the banned book theme unless you want to, but what we are going to do is use this site in step 2, and it works best with Chrome or Firefox, for the emoji flat maker. Now, this can be very helpful. You can do a Google image search just for inspiration. So if I'm looking for Skeletor, the He-Man character, and I'm looking for inspiration for an emoji, I can always just search that. And I get, pretty funny examples of his head. So I like that one. But basically, these are kind of the icons that are used. So how can I simplify that into kind of the emoji realm? And I get to have a lot of creative expression in how I do that. So to explore that, I might be inspired by such things, but I can save them and I can keep them on my desktop. So I'll go ahead and pull those out of my master folder. So I have this inspiration, I have this inspiration, I have this inspiration. Because though you might not have grown up with him, you might know this meme from the internet. And then my challenge is to use this emoji maker to get something close. So this is how this works. All of these are vector shapes that have been made for you. And you can start by deleting and starting with a blank slate. The first thing you need to pick is your base color or shape. If you're not able to side scroll, then you can do Command- to shrink it so that all the options are available to you, if for whatever reason your mouse is not side scrolling for you. And then you pick your basic shape, right? Skeletor is a skeleton, so it might make sense to have this as my base. But he's a yellow skeleton, and there is no yellow skeleton shape. But the thing that's maybe most prominent about him is his purple cloak. So as a background shape that's kind of behind everything else, and I can only choose one of these, I'm going to choose this one because it's purple. There's no wrong answer. You're just playing around with vectors. It will get you started. Okay, next I'm going to choose the eye attributes. And for the eyes, this is where they give you the most options. So many, right? And when you click on one, you can also add multiples. And they will show up as kind of dark gray. Right? And they will show up like cutouts of paper, which is why we practice with this. So whatever you choose latest or most recently is going to show up on top of what you chose before. So if I wanted, these eyebrows to go away, I'd click them, but if I want them to show up on top, I'd click them again. And then if I wanted these to show up on top, I'd click them again. I kind of like those red eyes and the little lifted eyebrow expression. So you can experiment a little bit with this if I want something more symmetrical. But I kind of like the asymmetry of this. And if I want some bags under the eyes, maybe I can find something. There we go. And then put these on top. But I can always look at my inspiration. And Skeletor does not have pupils. He doesn't have eyeballs, right? So maybe instead of those red eyes, though I like them, I'm just going to go for solid shapes like that. And if I want them to be a little sillier, I could even do something like that. I'm going to layer them up. Now I can move on to the mouth features, or I can skip around. I remember from doing this with you at the end of last class that there is a little nose feature here that I can use. That's a little skull-like. And I don't think there's anything else I found too interesting. And then for the mouth, I could do something like that, but it covers up the nose and it doesn't make it look like a skeleton. So I think I want him just screaming. Maybe not smiling, but I could always change that. Maybe that's helpful. Maybe this. Nope, it's too high. So you're playing around. You're finding what gets you close within these limited options. It helps you understand that when you're using vectors, they are just cutouts of solid shapes in their most basic form. And here you're not able to move them. You're not able to change their size, right? They're either turned on or they're turned off. So it makes you have to be pretty creative in how you approach it. I think that's probably going to be it. Well, maybe I can use that one instead. Right, so remember they are dark gray. And now if I want that nose to show up on top, I find it again, I turn it off, and I turn it back on. Even though it looks like a mustache, I'll turn that into a frown. So if that's the closest I can get, then I'm going to download it. And the closest I got at the end of last class was this. And so I can see, well, what do I like better? Well, I kind of do like that highlight behind. And yeah, I'll add my own mouth. So I'm going to use that one instead. How can I recreate that one? It's just about finding the right eyes that are white behind. Probably these. And then putting the dark eyes on top. And then turning off the others that are kind of muddying it. So you'll get the hang of this hopefully pretty quickly. Vectors unlike compositing with layers, you tend to have a lot of vectors.